Dead Poets Society is a story about Neil Perry and John Keating and the relationship they share with growth. I've decided to use something I'm very confident in to explore this topic, a commander deck from the game Magic the Gathering. Now, if you don't know, a commander deck is 100 unique cards helmed by a commander, which is a legendary creature with an ability you base the deck off of. The first struggle I had when coming up with this deck is the first question most people ask. Who should be the commander? I started with two major options that were resonating with me. Narcy, Fablesinger, and Denry Klin, editor-in-chief. I wanted the commander to match Mr. Keating rather than Neil, as I feel like his relationship to the boys is something that can be made into a mechanical version easier than Neil's relationship with poetry and art. I ended up choosing Narcy because I wanted to lean more towards the poetry and the art side of Dead Poets Society. I thought it would match the vibes of the story more, and it allowed for more consistency. So let's start with Narcy. Um, Narcy represents Keating and how he imparts wisdom upon the boys. That this is shown mechanically through the card draw whenever an enchantment, which in this case would be a poem or a piece of literature that they consume in class, has been finished or sacrificed. Flavor text is also very important for the idea that Keating follows sucking the marrow out of life, or rather, following your bliss. It reminds the reader that life is finite and that we have to use the time as best as we can. Now, let's go into some of the veggies that we have in this deck. Veggies being ramp, draw, and removal to help play the game. For ramp, we have rampant growth, cultivate, abundant growth, fertile ground, wild growth, broken bond, and farseek. Now, most of these were chosen for a few reasons. Number one, ease of access. Most people already have these cards or they're extremely cheap. Number two, flavor. Most of these cards work to portray the relationship that Keating has with the boys, both through name and through mechanics, holding up the rest of the game through these cards. Next, we have to draw enough cards to consistently have a hand to play. We'll mostly be doing this with cards like Satyr Enchanter or Enchantress Presence to make the enchantments, which in this deck represent the poems and literature that they learn in class, to draw us cards. Um, this is sort of used to show how the kids learn from the experiences and the poems of both each other and Keating. Some of these standout cards being Crushing Disappointment, which illustrates Neil Perry's relationship with his father. Harmonized, which is the relationship they share with Keating and the boys. Ambition's Cost and Elvish Archive and Archivist. We are a bit light on draw in this deck, as our commander provides some of it naturally. To finish off our veggies, we have our removal. I wanted to lean a bit heavier into edicts, which are cards that make people sacrifice things that they control, to give a feeling of betrayal over creatures they control, limiting the amount of care your opponents can put into them. Some of the cards were chosen to fit the ending scene, with the boys having to choose between saving themselves and incriminating uh, John Keating or getting expelled. Others were chosen to represent the lowest part of Neil's life before he committed suicide. Our board wipes in this deck are Extinguish All Hopes and Farewell, both focusing primarily on Neil and his feelings after he came home from playing Puck in Midsummer Night's Dream right before he ended his own life. Next, we have our single target removal. Here we see Stroke of Midnight, the high point of Neil's life, being him playing Puck, Incriminate, Crack Open, Innocent Blood, which are all focused around different parts of the movie. Crack Open being a more symbolic take on them cracking themselves open and seeing the depth that they have, making a treasure that they can all share. Now it's time to move on to the meat of the deck, our enchantment suite. Most of it is either a saga, which represents poems, or a self sacrificing enchantment that synergizes with the commander. Most notably, we play Elspeth Conquers Death, Soul Snare, and Elspeth's nightmare to continue our removal section, as well as Azusa's many journeys and Era of Enlightenment for some of our sagas. Both these being related to Keating and his advice to the boys, then changing the trajectory of their life by explaining his many journeys and enlightening the boys. Finally, we have the characters. We have Neil, our tragic poet, and Charlie, our spirited companion. Let's start with Neil. I focus mostly on creatures that would sacrifice themselves for an effect. See the aptly named tragic poet and El Cid of Life's Bounty, who sacrifice themselves to reanimate an enchantment. This is mostly used both to resemble his death, but also his love of poetry and drama, and how he'd give anything, including his life, to pursue them. Charlie, on the other hand, is represented in two major cards: Spirited Companion and Fall of Lord Conda. Spirited Companion is there to represent how he was the life of the boys, acting as one of the major pushing factors of most of the events, without taking Keating's words to heart. While Fall of Lord Conda represents his downfall after the events of Neil's death, with him being expelled from the school. Next, we have Todd and Keating. Todd is almost entirely a supportive role throughout the film, mostly staying back and growing with the boys. And so I wanted to represent him through supportive pieces. This is where we see Jukai Naturalist and Destiny Spinner. These are both supportive pieces that help with the game plan of the deck by providing ramp or protection. Finally, we have Mr. Keating himself, our mentor figure for the boys, who is represented by Barbara Wright, a Saga support piece, who is a teacher of history, not quite of English, but is in that same realm of imparting wisdom on others, and Satsuki the Living Lore, a character who is wholly dedicated to the preservation and teaching of the past and how we can grow forward from it. So, since we're playing a deck based around the idea of imparting lessons and like finishing sagas and doing all this, I wanted Keating to be represented through support pieces for that.